Hey guys, welcome to Carnivorous Plants Hub. Today I'm going to be repotting a Venus flytrap for you. Me and the wife actually went out to Home Depot and we found this guy while we were looking for blinds. Well, my wife was looking for blinds, but anytime I'm at Home Depot or Lowe's, I'm always looking for any possible carnivorous plants that they have, and I was able to score this here Venus flytrap. This is a typical species, as it wasn't marked really necessarily what this is exactly. But this one is a little bit larger than some of my other ones, so I'm really excited to grow this one. But today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be repotting it into this guy. And guys, real quick before I get too far, I just wanted to thank you for being here. My dream is to actually open up a carnivorous plant nursery someday, and you being here and watching this video is supporting me, and I appreciate that so much. You can further support me by subscribing to my channel, liking this video. Anything that you end up purchasing out of my description actually throws me a little bit of a kickback, so all of that kind of stuff really supports me and helps me in starting my own nursery and in my own community, because we don't really have one yet. So that's something I really want to do someday, and this is all just kind of practice and helping me lead up to that moment. So thank you for being here. But let's go ahead and get to it here. We're going to repot this guy, but first, before we repot it, I wanted to let you know that everything that you need to grow your own Venus flytrap is actually in the description. The plant itself, the planter potter that you'll need, and also the soil mix that you need. You can actually buy all this stuff individually, so you can bring this home and then repot. I also have a video that goes over all the soil mix that I make, so if you want to go to like Lowe's, Home Depot, and get all of your own ingredients and mix your own soil, there's a link up here. You can check that out, and that will actually show you exactly what I do to make this mix myself. So, and this here is my distilled water. That's going to be one of my tips here in just a second, but just make sure that no matter what you do with these plants, you're always giving them distilled water only. Never give them any water that comes from the tap. Typically tap water has way too many minerals in it, and that'll actually burn the roots on these guys. So I guess that kind of leads to my first tip, which is watering. Always water with the distilled water. These plants actually grow in South Carolina, in the United States. They are not tropical plants, despite common belief. A lot of people think that these are kind of exotic tropical plants that grow like in the jungle, but that's just not the truth. They actually grow in an area that gets very hot in the summer, gets a lot of direct sunlight, and then gets pretty cold in the winter time. So they actually go through kind of a normal life cycle of a perennial type plant. So, and they actually do go into something called dormancy. They'll actually almost look like they completely die. Most of the traps will fall off and turn black, and then these will actually save their energy through the winter to make a nice comeback during spring. So that's actually really normal for these plants when you grow them outside, kind of in their normal natural habitat. Dormancy is really good for them, and it actually helps them live a long time. So it's totally okay if they die back during the winter and they're not super as awesome and cool as they are kind of right now. So we're going to talk about distilled water. So one of the coolest things about these plants is obviously they eat flies, right? So not gonna lie, usually when people get these fly traps, you see on YouTube videos a lot, the first thing that they want to do is they want to just start feeding all the traps flies or bugs or insects or whatever. Honestly, it's not really good for them. Usually one plant will eat one bug per week or so, per every couple weeks. So the way that I've always kind of looked at it and the way it's been explained to me is the sun is actually what helps your plants grow. They actually don't need insects to grow. They actually grow in bogs that are super devoid of any nutrients in the soil, so they don't get any of their nutrients from the soil, and that's why you have to use like a peat moss, perlite mix, soil that doesn't have any minerals or nutrients in it, because that'll burn their roots. It's the same as using the tap water. Any of the minerals in the tap water will also burn their roots, so you have to use a special soil mix. What I use is a peat moss, perlite, and silica sand mix, and that helps keep your soil nice and aerated, and make sure that there's no minerals or anything in the soil, so that the plant itself is going to get all of its energy and all of its growth from the sun. And then the way the bugs work is the best way you can consider the bugs is like they're the fertilizer. So if you think about it, if you go and you give a plant too much fertilizer, it kills it. So if you go and give your plant too many bugs or too many flies, that fertilizer will eventually be too much for it and it'll kill it as well. So My rule of thumb is if you want to give your Flytrap a fly, that's fine. Give it a fly every couple of weeks or so. But for the most part, unless you're showing off to your friends or something, there's really no reason to feed it flies. It's going to get as many flies as it needs to survive without your help. I've got a Flytrap outside right now that has there's 3 different Flytrap plants, and between all 3 of them, there's about 6 flies that are in the traps right now, and I haven't done any of that myself. That's all of them. So they'll catch what they need, and try not to overfeed them, because it's really easy to do. So real quick on pots, make sure you're using a plastic pot, plastic or resin. One of the problems with like a clay pot or terracotta pots is what they'll do is they'll actually leach minerals into the soil. And the problem with that is again, if you have too many minerals or whatever in the soil, they will actually burn the roots. So we don't want that. So plastic or resin is your best bet. Or if it's going to be a clay pot, you want to make sure that it's fully glazed. And then that way, that glaze will make sure that none of that leaching from the minerals from the terracotta or clay pot actually goes into the soil and harms your plant. Let's see if there's anything else that I wanted to go over here. Yeah, I think that's just about it in terms of tips for making sure that they grow correctly. If you guys have any questions about how these things need to be treated, I have a website, Carnivorous Plant Hub, where it's just full of tips. It has a care guide specifically for Venus flytraps. Literally has everything you need in it to make sure that your Venus flytrap grows big and strong. Also, throw a comment on the comments here, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about your Venus flytrap or what's going on with it, and maybe something that we can do to help make it grow better, or what you need to do to make sure you accommodate it. A lot of people like to try to grow these under lights and inside. I kind of recommend not doing that. They're not a great inside plant. I know some people have been able to keep them alive for a few years, but it seems like in the long run they always kind of die under grow lights, and they need that actual real direct sunlight. So the more sun that you can give your plant, the better. I do know some people have had success maybe taking it outside for a few hours, getting it some of that direct sunlight, and then also giving it the heat lamp throughout the day. So maybe a mix of both, that can work, but you do want to make sure and try to adhere to giving it some kind of a dormancy period during the winter time. But anyway, so that's kind of all my care tips. If I missed anything, throw some stuff in the comments. If you got some other good care tips and suggestions, definitely throw it in there. Share for everyone to check out. What we're going to do now is we're actually going ahead and pull this guy out, and we're going to put him in there with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to throw my camera on the tripod, and then so I can have my hands free while we do this, so that you guys can kind of watch the process. Let's do it. Okay guys, now that I got the camera on the tripod, let's go ahead and start off by getting our substrate put into my plastic pot here. One tip I did leave out, I forgot to mention, is make sure you have holes in the bottom. One thing that's really important for these plants to do well is that there's good aeration and that there's good water flow through here. They are susceptible to root rot, which is the roots getting too much water, and then also crown rot. So if that water doesn't aerate through the soil, the crown of the plant, which is the top of the rhizome, can actually get rot as well, and you don't want that. So the nice thing about this soil mix that I make is that it's really aerated. The silica sand in there and the perlite really give it an easy way for the water to go through it. But at the same time, the perlite soaks up that water and holds it. So the water goes through well, but this soil also retains the water really well. And also peat moss is a really good water retainer. So the whole mix is really designed specifically for making sure that this plant gets the best water flow possible. And then I just bought this here, this planter. Usually I buy a planter, comes with a tray. This one didn't have a tray, so I just kind of bought this little plastic tray just as something so the water doesn't go everywhere when it leaks out the bottom. Some people like to fill their tray full of water for their Venus flytraps, but I've had them succumb to root rot because they were sitting in too much water. With this planter, it would probably be fine because this is a bigger one, but I've seen ones that are smaller that sit in these trays where the roots are constantly exposed to that water and they can get root rot. So I don't like to keep water in this tray, but I do like to make sure that the substrate is always moist. You don't want it to be soaking wet. You want it to be wet to the touch, but you don't want it to be like muddy. You want to make sure that they're staying a little moist, but not dry. If it's completely dry, it needs to be watered. It should never be completely dry, but it also should never be completely wet like muddy. So let's go. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and start. So the reason I have this glass of water here, you're probably kind of wondering, is the glass of water, I'm going to actually dip the roots from this plant into the water, and that'll actually get off all of this old substrate that they have here. I don't know what's in this. I don't know where this came from. So I'm going to be just getting rid of all of this, and I'm going to try to get as much of this off in this water as possible. And the reason I'm using distilled water, again, do not use any mineral water, any faucet water. This has to be under 50 parts per million, and you can actually get a meter. But I know for sure that this distilled water that I get, you can get this at any big box store, whether it's Walmart, Fred Meyer, anywhere. And I know that there's no parts in this, so I know that that's going to be really pure water, and it's not going to hurt my Venus flytrap. All right, so what I'm going to do is this part here is just like any plant. You're going to grab your plant, you're going to pinch the sides. You're going to try to get them out. This part's always tricky. So we're going to pull them out of here. Here it comes. There we go. Okay. So there's my plant. Uh-oh. Don't like that. Oh, whoops, I thought that was dirt. That's actually just that trap is black. So here's my root system right here. You want to try to get as much of this root system as possible. So what I'll do is I'll get the rest of this off, and then we will dip this. I have a feeling, guys, that there might be more than one plant here. So let's get this dirt off and see what exactly we got. Let's see here. Just be patient, guys. With these, you just want to make sure that you're not ripping this plant apart, and it's really easy to do sometimes. It's really easy to rip all these roots. You can see the roots right here. We want to make sure that those stay in as much tact as possible. And let's see, actually this looks like this might be connected. Man, I thought for sure. Let's go ahead and dip this real quick, and let's see if we can get some of this dirt off and see if this reveals two plants or if this is just... See, the nice thing is when you dip it in this water, all that substrate just kind of falls off. So this white part here, guys, is called the rhizome. You can see here where it comes up to here to where it turns white. That's the rhizome, and that's the part that you want to make sure it doesn't get too much water, because it can get off. Here we go. I knew it. I knew that there was two plants. See, those roots should be separate. There we go, look. So that's one of the reasons I picked this one, is that I suspected that there was actually two plants with this flytrap. So yeah, so that's kind of exciting. Two plants for the price of one. So I'm actually going to get these finished washed off here, and then we're going to you guys can tear off some of these dead ones too while you're in here. Make sure you tear down though, not to ruin a lot of the roots, and sometimes it might rip a little bit of that rhizome off, which is just fine. I'm going to leave that one. That one's not quite completely dead. See, it tears a little piece of that rhizome off. This is actually the process that you would go through for propagating these if we were doing that today, which we're not. But that rhizome is actually what takes off, and you can plant that with one of these good pitch, or one of these good flytrap heads, and then they can actually take off and grow a brand new rhizome from there. So that's how that works. But we're not doing that today. See, there's another piece of that rhizome came off. There we go. Okay, that one looks pretty good. Oh, let's get this last guy off here. Oh, come on, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna lay this one down. Actually, I'm gonna lay this down off camera real quick because I'm running out of room here. I probably should have got a bigger table. I tried, but I couldn't get it to fit in this room. The reason I'm actually in a room today instead of doing this outside, I like to do this outside a lot more than I like doing it indoors, but we actually have a gnarly windstorm going on right now, and there would have been no way for you to hear me, or for me to even really have any peace, because it is just whipping out there. Alright, so let's go ahead and peel off a few of these dead ones from this one. See, look at that. Nice chunk of rhizome came off that one. That one still has a little too much rhizome. I don't want to rip that one off. This one looks like it's ready to come off. Okay, I think I'm going to leave this one, and I'll cut this one. I don't want to rip that one off the rhizome, because you can see it has a little bit of life left there. So Okay, so I think now we've got these guys. Guys, I'm gonna cut this video real quick and I'm gonna clean this off, just because I have kind of a mess here. So give me just a second, I'll clean this off and I'll be right back with you. Okay guys, I am back. Sorry about that. So here we go. So I've got my two fly traps out now. So the next thing we need to do is we actually just need to put the substrate that I have pre-mixed here into this guy. Again, check out the link in the description if you guys want to know how to make the substrate. If you don't want to have anything to do with that, I understand. You can actually buy a similar mix that's completely already made for you. It's really affordable, and it comes from somebody that I totally trust because I've actually bought it before when I used to live in a different area and I didn't have the means as easily to buy my own mixes to make this substrate. So I don't do that anymore, but I do know that I used to do it and it was a great mix. So okay, so we're gonna fill that about here. You guys don't want to pack it down too much. If you pack it down too much, the problem is that it doesn't get good flow. So you want to make sure not pack it down too much. Okay, so I'm gonna actually move this out of here. Now that we got that going, I want to make sure, I'm gonna look at my camera real quick and make sure that this is kind of all in the middle. Here we go. Okay, now, I actually don't have my, that's what I'll just use my finger. So what you really should do is you should have like a pen or a popsicle stick. Give me a second, I'm gonna grab a pen. Oh, okay. I found this super fancy double-sided colored pencil. Okay, so what I like to do is I have two, so I'm not gonna go right in the middle. I'm actually gonna put one hole here. I'm gonna go ahead and poke way down deep. Go as far as you can. One tip I should have said earlier that I didn't is make sure that your substrate is a little wet. First of all, the peat moss needs to have a little bit of water in it and it retains a ton of water. But the nice thing is now that I'm making these holes, this hole actually stays completely open. And I don't have to battle keeping this open because it packs a little bit. You don't want this to be soaked, but if it's just a little moist, just like you should keep the substrate anyway, then this will be much easier to work with. Okay, now the reason I want the pencil is I want to take this and I want to stretch this out as far as it can go. This one's going to be tricky because it's kind of curly-cuing on me. But what you want to do is you want to take this and you want to push it down as far into the hole as possible, these roots. And the reason that you want to do that is these roots like to be stretched out. They don't like to be doubled up if possible. And then what you want to do is you want to bring all these guys up, kind of pinch them a little bit, and you want to make sure that when you put the dirt over here, I'm trying to make sure that you can see that, you want to go almost up to the top of that rhizome, but you don't want to completely cover the rhizome. Okay, you want to pack that down a little bit because you want to make sure that it has a little bit of support. Okay, you can see there's a little bit of that rhizome showing right there. That's exactly what you want. If the rhizome's completely covered, that's when you can get that root rot, or I'm sorry, crown rot, and that crown rot can be really nasty for your plant. So you definitely don't want that. So that was actually the smaller of the two. So this one here is a little bit bigger. Oop, there's one more here that I need to pull off. This guy's dead here. Okay, pull him off. Now I'm gonna grab this one at the top here, and see this one has a longer root. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that long root right there against that white? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to make sure that that root gets pushed all the way down as far as we can go here as I'm pushing this down. Here we go. Let's get the rest of these roots down in there. Push this down. There we go. Looks pretty good. And cover up the rhizome here. Make sure that it gets packed down a little bit. Now one thing that kind of stinks is that whenever you take these out of their planter and that you separate them a little bit, they kind of lose a little bit of their ability to stand up as well as they did before. But don't be alarmed. After a few days they usually recover from that, and they'll be standing up again just fine. So don't be alarmed that they don't stand up quite as good as they were in the old. I guarantee you once you take them out of that old substrate that they've been in forever, probably for weeks or months or whatever, and you put them in their new substrate, they're going to be significantly happier. Now, one thing I will say is don't be alarmed if you have an initial period where it doesn't seem like these guys are doing very good. sometimes the shock of being replanted and then being acclimated into real sun, sometimes that's kind of a lot for these plants to go through, and sometimes they take right off and they do fantastic, and then other times they just take a little while to acclimate. Like I have some outside right now that look like that they were almost ready to die, and you can actually check out my video that I have where we brought them home. I have an update with them, and then my next update you're going to see how much better they're doing. They went from looking pretty good to being almost dead to now they look like they're making a really strong comeback. So now that they've acclimated to my substrate, they've acclimated to the amount of sun that I'm giving them, they're starting to make a really good recovery, and I think these ones are going to do really well. You do want to make sure that you acclimate these to the sun. So the way I like to acclimate is I like to do basically an hour a day. So what I'll do is I'll do an hour a day for like 2 or 3 days, and then I'll do 2 hours for 2 or 3 days, and then I'll keep doing that all the way up until I get to about 5 or 6 hours. And then once I hit that 5 or 6 hour mark, that's when I'm comfortable with putting them out into the sun and then giving them that ability to be full sun again. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off the tripod real quick so I can give you guys a good look at this plant now that we are planted. All right, guys, here we go. Look at, we are replanted now. We are looking great. This plant did a really good job. It's even kept a little bit of its ability to stand up. You can see I'll come from the side here so you can see that it's still standing up pretty good. Some of them are leaned over a little bit, but they were anyway. But some of them are still standing up too. So you got this one. Look at, there's some new growth. You can see the ones that are new. So that's exciting to see that one right there. That's a new growth. This one here hasn't opened up yet. That one looks a little unhealthy though, so I'm not sure what that one's gonna do, but now I just gotta make sure that I acclimate it correctly. I keep it watered. Oh, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and go grab my mister real quick. So I'm gonna grab my mister so that we can give it a nice drink of distilled water. Okay, I'm back. I grabbed my mister. I've had this mister for a few years now. I strongly recommend that you have a mister if you're gonna have carnivorous plants. It just makes it much easier. Especially if you have Nepenthes. They do like a good misting because they like to be a little more, they like a little more humidity. So I like to keep them misted a little bit better. Yeah, I'll link one of these up in the description, one that's a little bit better than this one. This one's old, but make sure you have a mister. These things will need a nice big drink after you plant them. So let's go ahead and give them a drink here. You can mist these, it doesn't hurt them, but there's not really any need. So I try to just kind of keep the misting down by the roots. I'm not going to put these in direct sun right now, so it doesn't really hurt to get some water on them, but it's just not necessary. They don't necessarily need to be misted like maybe a tropical plant might that needs a lot of humidity. So no need to mist the plants. You can if you want, it's just not really necessary. Good. This guy's a good drink. These pump misters are really cool. So again, I'll have a link in the description for if you want to check one of those out. So there we go, guys. Let's go and get you some good close-ups here so you can really check out this plant. There's a head there. This is probably the biggest and coolest one right here. Look at that, you can see it's really cool. You can see the 3 little hairs. Let me see if I can get a little closer. See those 3 little hairs on the right, and then there's another 3 little hairs on the left. Those are the trigger hairs. When those hairs get triggered, that's when the trap knows to close. Now these traps are smart. Once they get triggered the first time, unless they get triggered again the second time, it won't actually tighten all the way down. They'll open up again. And that's to prevent false positives, like maybe a raindrop triggers it or a leaf, they'll close. And if they don't feel that bug wiggling on the inside, then they know that they've got a false trigger and that they probably need to open back up, because they expel a ton of energy when they close these heads. And if they don't actually get a bug, it can actually really hurt them and kill them. So that's why you don't ever want to trigger these unless you are giving them an actual insect. And then if you're going to give them a dead bug, you want to kind of massage the outside of it a little bit so that it triggers those hairs again, and then it'll do a tight squeeze. And once it does that tight squeeze, that's how you know for sure that they're getting ready to release their enzymes and digest that insect. So, but I have all that information and much more at my website at carnivorousplanthub.com. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I'm sorry this went a little bit longer than I thought it was going to. I'm such a nerd with these. I could talk about them all day. But if you really like this, subscribe to this channel, and I will make sure and give you guys updates on this plant to see how it's doing. Anytime I have anything cool happens, like if I catch them catching a fly, something like that, I'll throw it on my channel so you can check it out. I also have some Nepenthes right now that I'm growing, which are pitcher plants. I have some Sarracenia, which are like a trumpet pitcher Sarracenia purpurea, and then my Nepenthes is Ventrata. And I give you updates on those carnivorous plants as well. And then I have some other Venus flytraps that are going right now that are a little smaller than these, that didn't do so well but are starting to do awesome. So you guys can watch the videos on those as well. But thank you so much again for being here. Like I said earlier, my dream is to have a nursery one day where I sell and house carnivorous plants for my community. So I'm really working up to try to do that. So anything you do helps me a lot, and just by you being here is one of the biggest helps. But subscribing and subscribing to the channel, liking this video, all things that help me out a ton. Thanks a lot, guys.